The summer of 2014, Gary came in, being an expert in the rail system, came in and looked at how we could best update our system. He spent a fair bit of time, came out with a very good report in November of 2014. There were 20 recommendations in that report, and I asked him a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, if he would come back again and just give us an update on the progress we're making on all 20 recommendations. So it's fortuitous that Gary happens to be here this week. He came in on Sunday. He's looking at where we are with respect to his recommendations as of Monday, Tuesday, and again today. And I asked him to join me today because of course, yesterday's events are quite significant and we need to address them, and they have a connection to what he recommended in November. If I can just add to what Colleen said, with respect to a technical briefing, it will happen after Gary and I are finished and we've answered some questions. Richard Sykes is here, he's our Vice President Maintenance, and he'll provide a technical briefing on the root cause, which relates to the induction motor, and Richard will take you through that. We have over 500 of these induction motors, and I think you'll find his briefing quite instructive. Now, with respect to yesterday, the induction motor problem resulted in 19 trains being out of service. 19. And of those 19, 15 in fact were attended within 20 minutes. And for those of you that follow us pretty closely, you'll remember that Gary's report, recommendation number 10 in his report, was that we should be able to get to every train that needs an attendance within 20 minutes. So yesterday we got to 15 of the 19, but that's not good enough. 4 we did not get to in the proper time. So there are a number of things that we need to be doing to address that, and Gary will have more to say about that in a few minutes. But there are a number of actions that we need to be taking given what transpired yesterday and the inconvenience that many of our passengers faced. And I want to apologize very directly to them. Many people were disrupted in trying to get from downtown to elsewhere, or from elsewhere into downtown, and simply we need to do better to meet their service needs. Now, there's a number of actions we're taking related to yesterday's events. The first is Richard and his people will obviously be looking at the 500 plus induction motors to make sure that we don't have a more significant issue, and he's started that process already. Clearly, we've had significant training underway for some time, and we'll continue on that path. We've got additional resources coming in with respect to the stations, and that we've got 16 people coming in August 1st and another 60, a total of 64 by October 1st. I realize that doesn't help yesterday, but that's all part of the plan of providing greater service around stations and being able to attend to everything we need to when trains are out of service. In addition, we are clearly strengthening our control room. That has been underway for some time. So we've got a number of things that are quite important that we have in place that I think will make this a much better system. Maybe more importantly, from a customer's perspective, we need to have some very direct understanding with customers as to what our service commitments are, what they can expect of us, and the consequences if in fact we don't meet them. And I've asked Gary to in fact address that matter, look at best practices worldwide, and give us a recommendation by early August. And he's committed to doing that. So I think that's a very important part of the actions we plan to undertake. Finally, I would just say that we had a terrific response to the events of yesterday. We had over 100 people involved, many station attendants. We had a number of police, security, we had supervisors, and so we had a terrific response Our issue yesterday, in my mind, is we still don't have the proper allocation of staff among stations to be able to respond in the 20 minutes that the target of Gary's outlines. So that's what we're addressing in the context of the 5 actions I mentioned. I would also like to say that we're very pleased with how things turned out from a safety perspective yesterday. Safety is number one at TransLink, as you know, as it should be, and things were handled in a very safe fashion. Having said that, the fact that people stayed calm and responsible makes an entire difference. And people staying in trains until, in fact, instructed otherwise is extremely important. So again, thank you to our customers. I apologize for what transpired, and that really concludes my statement. I think Colleen's going to take some questions now, and both Gary and I are quite pleased to address those as you see fit.
Okay, thank you very much, Doug. So we're going to do questions one at a time. So if you're going to state your name and your outlet, I'll start with Ian Bailey.
Quick question, Mr. Allen. Is there any consideration of compensation, such as a free transit day for those who are inconvenienced people stuck in trains for hours, their rush hour disrupted? Any free transit day, and if so, why not specifically?
Ian, what we did on May 21st and 22nd, because the delays were more than a half a day, we did in fact offer rebates, as you know, to everybody on our system. So our general principle is if it's more than a half a day, we'll respond. Obviously, we need to formalize what sort of guidelines we're going to follow, and we'll do that in the course of the coming weeks.
Mr. Allen, Dan Burr from CBC.
Yeah.
What specifically are these new staff going to do? What are
Well,
these new people going to do?
A lot of the people that are coming to the stations will in fact be doing work that the station attendants are doing now related to the fare box and related activities. And what we're essentially doing is giving station attendants more time to in fact be on the system, to get on trains, to in fact recover, just like we saw with 15 of the 19 yesterday.
And again, what are the numbers you've got? How many coming in August and October?
Well, this is total staff coming in, 16 August 1st, 64 in total October 1st.
John?
So, Mr. Allen, I understand that there was a problem with an induction motor. Was it just one motor in one train that
Correct.
blew this whole thing?
It was, and Richard Sykes, as I mentioned, is here, and
Give us
he'll
the briefing
explain
on
the technical briefing around that. But the answer is yes to your question.
Doug, Scott with CTV News, Scott Roberts. You mentioned that TransLink needs to do better in the future.
It does.
Why isn't TransLink doing better today?
Well, if you look at how we're doing with respect to reliability overall, it's pretty darn good. The difficulty is, or the contradiction is, that you're going to look back at May and now the event of yesterday and say these seem to be somewhat numerous, and you have to do better. And I agree, we do. But the overall track record of TransLink is still very strong. And that's, I think you know, what we put out in our FACT campaign.
Tell me, what can you
can
say
you
though
tell
about
us-
the
yes, can you
variety
tell-
of issues that we're having? Because this was a technical problem, a communication problem. We've had switching problems. We've had other problems. I mean, it seems to be a lot of different technical problems that are happening. What can you say about that?
Well, I would simply argue that 2 of the 4 maybe that we're talking about, 3 in May and this one, maybe 2 are technical problems, but I wouldn't go any further than that, and I wouldn't blame an entire system for failing based on 2 technical problems. The record's still pretty good. Can we do better? Yes. Should we be doing better? Of course.
CKW?
Can you tell us what the issue was with air conditioning on the trains? Because if people are hot and sticky, they're going to want to pry those doors open and get out as fast as they can.
The secret to that is get to the trains within 20 minutes, just like Gary recommended. We got to 15 of the 19. If you get to all 19 within 20 minutes, you don't have an issue generally. If in fact you go well beyond 20 minutes, which was the case yesterday, you have a problem. Customers have a problem. That's unacceptable.
Bottom line is you can't leave the power on.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
There were some complaints about the PA system at various stations. I understand that the PA system is being upgraded right now. Could you tell us how far along that is and when that PA system will be, that upgrade will be complete?
I'll give you 2 parts to that. One is it's better than it was, but it's not good enough. And Gary had a very close look at this issue in the last 48 hours because it's in his recommendations as something that has to be upgraded, and he'd be pleased to provide you with some detail as to where we are and where we're going.
Gary, do you want to actually address that?
Yeah. So just, you know, they've actually gone out and they've inspected most of the speaker systems on the system. A number of speakers actually have to be replaced because they physically damaged speakers. At the same time, within about 6 weeks, they'll be hiring an acoustical consultant that's going to come in and review every single station on the system to look at what needs to be done to improve the acoustics overall. They've just also done a major retrofit of the 114 Mark I vehicles, the original SkyTrain vehicles, and included in that was a complete replacement of the PA system on those vehicles. So actually you'll see quite a difference actually on the older vehicles and the quality of the messaging that comes across there.
Just to clarify, when will the system be clean and clear and easy to hear?
Well, I think what happens with all of this is that you go in and you start a retrofit program. Until we actually get a consultant on board that identifies the degree to which has to be done, we really can't identify how long it will take to do. But what you'll start seeing is a marked improvement, like a station at a time. It's not done like where you improve everything and just throw a switch and everything is better. It's actually improvements done on a station at a time basis.
You have a question right here?
Yep. Is the system getting too old? Because this is the stretch, which is the oldest stretch on the Expo line. It's over 30 years old. We look at Ontario and Scarborough. The Scarborough RT, they're using the same system. They're trying to demolish it. And in Vancouver, of course, we can't demolish it. So is the system getting too old? Is there a major upgrade that needs to be done to the communication system or the induction problem or switch problems?
Well, it's not getting too, it's not getting too old. It's kind of like an analogy would be looking at your house. Once your house reaches a certain age, you got to replace the roof structure, you've got to replace windows. It's similar with this system. When you look at London Transport, for example, they have a system that's been running for over 100 years. Toronto TTC subway systems, started running in the 1950s. So age really isn't it. It's really related to the degree of maintenance that has to happen on the system. But I think all transit systems, no matter where you go, you have major failures happening. The critical thing in all this is how you respond to an incident. It's not really the fact that an incident happens, it's how you respond to it and how you deal with the customers during the delay.
Mr. McNeil, I don't know if you're in a position.
Sorry, Kelly has a question.
I just had a quick question just in regards to maintenance. Are we seeing the maintenance budgets cut at all, or are we seeing regular maintenance on these trains?
The maintenance budget hasn't been cut. The maintenance budget really has not been cut. It's an ongoing maintenance program. Like I said, you just had a major refurb of the Mark I vehicles that are happening. But it's a large system, very complex. It takes time to upgrade things.
Mr. McNeil, I don't know if you're in a position to be candid on this, but you looked at the flaws in the system with the two incidents last year. You were here yesterday to see this all unfold, probably following social media and the media. How do you think TransLink and SkyTrain did with yesterday's incident based on your recommendations and based on what you learned last year?
Well, 6 months, 6 months has elapsed since I published my report. And actually within that time period, 6 months ago, or a year ago really, in July when the incidents happened, it took 6 hours to recover. Last night it was a little bit over 2 hours. So improvements have happened. You're getting, last night we had over 100 people that actually responded to the stations and the trains in order to try to deal with the customers. Effective communications, although the quality of the message because of the station PA systems, but effective communications got out to all the trains and everything. So I think there's a marked improvement. But as Doug Allen indicated, is it good enough? No, it's not good enough yet. It still needs to be improved.
What grade would you give yesterday?
I would give it probably a C.
C is not very good.
I would give it a C. And I think, again, it comes back to how quickly you can respond and get people out to the trains to deal with the people.
Gary, of the recommendations you made, how many has TransLink actually completed?
They've probably completed about 5, which I would call the quick wins, the easy things that you can do. But they're working on every single one of them. I've talked to all the staff that have been involved in this. They're working on a lot. You'll see a lot of things starting to roll out in July. You'll see some things happening in August as new staff are brought on. But it does take time.
About that, which particular recommendation do you think they need to catch up fast?
I think really it's staffing. It's getting more resources available to get out to the trains.
Okay, two more questions.
I have a question. Gary, Is the problem really that in order to get the trains back, the trains that are not at a station, you actually have to have a driver, you actually need a person on the train?
You need a dedicated. Once the system, the communications to the computer system fails, which happened for the 19 trains, you got to manually be able to drive the trains, and that's what the SGAs are qualified to do, and getting them out to the trains to then move people to the stations.
So the core problem is that we have robotic trains. I mean, if you had operators on the trains, then you wouldn't end up with this jam.
Well, if you had people on the trains, you'd still have problems, because then you have the human error factor that comes in. So it's really the actual automated system works surprisingly fantastic. You have very, very close headways, which would be very difficult to do if you had a manual operation. So it's a very effective system.
But if you had a person who was not necessarily an operator, a train operator, but a conductor, in other words, a person who's qualified in an emergency situation to bring a train in, then you'd solve everything. You'd need a person on every train is what I'm saying. That's the way to fix this.
Yeah, but that all relates to budgets.
Okay.
Big problems.
I have a question for Mr. Allen, if possible.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Mr. Allen, how did you get here today?
Well, I took the number 7 down 4th and then down Granville. It's very good service. I recommend it.
This Gary goes to write this report, another report again, the yesterday's problem.
Well, Gary's here really, as I mentioned earlier. This is fortuitous because I asked him about 3 weeks ago to review where we are with his original 20 recommendations from November 2014. That's what he's focused on, and one of those happens to be number 10 with respect to response to trains. Will probably get a little special attention because of yesterday's events.
Doug, you put air conditioning on the trains?
Well,
So why not?
I don't have a good answer to that at the moment. I think, again, the solution to this is, in fact, get to the trains early as recommended, and the problem of what people suffer gets eliminated or reduced substantially.
Okay, so we're going to do a technical briefing. I'll take one more question if anybody's got one.
Are you happy with the C
for
grade?
yesterday's efforts? When will there be an A? When will you guys be at an
Are
A?
you content
Well,
with C grade?
we've your question to Gary was quite specific. We are running a very good system, and all of us acknowledge it's well above C. In fact, I'm sure Gary will. You asked him what his response was to yesterday, and he said C. Is C good enough? No, it has to be much higher, and for the reasons I outlined.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Okay, so where are we doing the technical briefing?
All the reporters, if you would come over here, please. And Richard Sykes, right over here.
Okay.